Witchy and Weird podcast.
Hi, Witchy and Weird. I just wanted to pop in before the episode starts to give you a little update on what's happening over here. So I have decided to swap episodes to drop every Monday now, so you can start your week off right with Witchy and Weird shenanigans and yours truly. So get ready to see those in your feed every Monday as opposed to every Friday. Hello, Witchy and Weird. It has been quite a minute since I did a solo episode, so I'm here. I had to remember how I even recorded doing a solo episode because I usually just do interviews on Zoom, and then I'm gonna move my video up so I stop looking down. So yeah, there's a few things before we get into the episode that I wanted to cover. Number one is kind of like a bulletin board. Like if you are an astrologer or if you know an astrologer who would be down to do like the monthly lunar forecast episode. I've only done one of them with Daisy and with Bree. Bree is unfortunately not able to do like commit to a monthly thing anymore, and that's totally fine. We're gonna miss her, and maybe one day she'll be back. But yeah, so I'm looking for someone who can commit to like a monthly thing. It would be too much to schedule like a different astrologer every month for me at this point in the podcast. Maybe if it was like my full-time job, I could do that. Fingers crossed, right? So yeah, if you know anyone, if you have a recommendation, if you're like, hey, check this person out, I really love them, feel free to DM me on Witchy and Weird Pod for our IG. Or if you follow me on my personal account at Riv Sakurtov, feel free to just like send their profile my way. Or if you are that person, give that episode a listen first and see if that's something that you're into. The other thing that I wanted to do was like shout out to our Patreon Emma and to give a shout out to LB for buying me a coffee. So we do have a few ways now to pay or donate. I don't know. I always feel weird asking for money with these types of things, but it took me over 2 hours to write this episode, and then it takes me an hour to record, and then it takes over an hour to like download and edit and upload, and then I have to make graphics and all this stuff. So if you really love this, it's not something that I'm doing for money. It is really a labor of love because I don't really make a lot of money from this, but I think it's really important and I love these conversations. But if you love this and you want this, I always call it the ADHD train to keep chugging. We have a few options. So you can just sign up for a monthly kind of like donation fee. There's like, it's like non-committal. So you don't have to like agree to like a year or things like that. And you can pick your own amount. So you can do like $1 or you can do like $20 a month. And all of this is in our link in bio on our IG, and I always include it every single time in our show notes. So like if you click on the more details wherever you watch the podcast episode, all those links are in there. So that would be via Anchor. And then we also have the Ko-fi or coffee. I'm really still not sure how you pronounce that, but that one you can just give like a one-time like, oh, here's $4 for your coffee. There's that. And I want to say there's like one other one, but right now I'm blanking, but that's totally fine. So those are just things that I wanted to put out there and to just send gratitude to those who have supported us in the past and are continuing to support us. And also, just like share, like all of our posts, share with your friends, share on your social media, so that we can like reach more people. Like, honestly, that's like, I see this more as like a revolution. So, yeah, like I think it'd be cool if like thousands of people are listening. Okay, cool. So today's episode is about manifestation myths. I know that Mars is in Gemini, and a lot of people have been saying like, be careful with your language or things like that. I don't know. I think that's the thing that is going to be causing a lot of gossip and things. So I feel like this episode just really jumped out. I was like, I have a lot of things to say about these manifestation like methods that are popular in New Age spirituality. And so it is going to get a little spicy. Like generally I try to not be as spicy because I'm a very spicy person. Like I have Aries moon, Sagittarius rising. Um, so, and Cancer sun, to be honest, like a cardinal sign is pretty spicy. So yeah, it's gonna, it's probably gonna, it'll get there. You'll hear me get annoyed. Okay, so firstly, as a prerequisite, like before we even open like manifestation myths as an episode, I just wanted to say, these are all like my observations, either from my personal lived experience, from working with certain mentors, from watching videos on social media, from seeing what other people are sharing, from my own personal research with reading certain books and things on manifestation, and also psychic downloads that I've gotten when I am sitting there going like, why the fuck do people do this? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I ask my guides. So whatever I say, and this is, I've said this multiple times on the podcast, this is what I'm all about. Like, don't just listen to me word for word, right? Like, if it doesn't resonate with you, if you're like, this still works for me and I still want to do it, like, this is totally your decision. It's your life. I'm not in control of your life, right? So if something that I'm saying works for you, like, go ahead and do it. If something that I'm saying I don't like works for you, that's totally awesome, right? Like, this is a space for questioning things. That's like a big thing about me and my personality, questioning things. So take whatever I say, use your discernment. Does it sit right with me? Does it not sit right with me? And pick what resonates most for you. Because I know that a lot of people really buy into a lot of these popular manifestation, like modern manifestation theories, and it helps them. And you know what, if you're not wanting to change that, I'm not trying to, like tell you how to live your life. I'm just sharing things that I have observed and struggles that I have had and I've seen other have, and I see, like, for me, what I see. So yeah, let's just put that there in the beginning. Okay, so yeah, why am I talking about this? I've been having a lot of like psychic downloads and just a lot of thinking, like especially with wanting to shift my business more to just my products and less to my services, getting a part-time job as a reader in a shop. Like, been thinking a lot about manifesting, especially manifesting money, and just really questioning. This year has been a big theme of like questioning all the things that I've been taught by people and really deciding, like, is this something I feel resonates with me that I want to buy into? And taking a lot of time to like step back and observe what other people are saying, and really decide if that's something that I want to integrate. So that's kind of like where we are. And I feel like there is a shift I'm seeing of people realizing, like, oh my God, I don't need to like listen to everything that my mentor told me. And manifestation is a huge thing if you have like a business coach or a business mentor or things like that. And who living in capitalism doesn't want access to more money, doesn't want a better job, a better home, all of these things. Manifestation is such a huge part of our lives because a lot of people were always trying to call in more and more and more. We're always trying to be better and better and better, especially in the spiritual world, because we're supposed to be, spirituality is about like growth, growing and being better. um so the most popular one is the law of attraction, that I wanted to start with. I do want to admit that I did buy The Secret, the book, at one point in my life, and I tried reading it really hard. Like, I really tried to read it thoroughly, because people are like, oh my God, you got to read The Secret. It's going to help everything. It's going to change your life. Like, and I couldn't get through it. Like, I really couldn't get through it. I flipped through a lot of the concepts and things like that. And there was just a lot of things that, like, I don't know, I thought it was going to be a completely different book than it was. The structure is kind of like a topic and then like different rich or successful, mostly white dudes. There's some ladies, some people of color, but mostly white dudes. Just giving their personal advice about the topic, like giving you little quotes and things like that that are supposed to be like, wow, like mind blowing. Um, and I at one point did some research into The Secret because I was like, why did this book exist? Because there are quite a few people in the book that are in the spiritual, like their business or their career or their job is in the spiritual industry. But then there's like people who are just like business owners. And so I was like, where does this come from? Right. So that led me to find out like most of these people are like elderly white successful men. Like it's like Bob Proctor and like people like that. Like if you Google all of them, it's like a photo of a man over 50 who is white. And like I said, there's a few ladies in there, there's a few POCs in there. And it just like when I researched it, it was kind of like, why did all these like rich white people want to talk about how to be successful? And it's weird how they're like selling it as like a secret, right? And I know that there's like a movie that's associated with it too. So a lot of people will just watch the movie instead of reading the book. Um, but it's just weird that it's like, I know the secret for the law of attraction, the laws of the universe, how the universe works, and I'm sharing it with you. And it's like, how did all of y'all know this secret? Like, where did this secret, was it revealed to you? So I don't know. It just really, um it was basically capitalism. Like it was just, oh, there's an opportunity for money, we're gonna, gather all these rich people's, advice, and we're going to share it. And I think that, with any type of research, I didn't know who any of these people were before I read the book. Like the only person I knew was Bob Proctor, because he's really big in the spirituality community. I've never watched or seen any of his things, I just knew of him. All these other people, I never knew they existed before I read the book. So it's kind of like, why am I listening to these people and taking on their words as like the new framework for my whole entire life if I don't even know who they are and why they're successful and what they do? And yeah, it tells you like what their job is or whatever, but it's like vetting your sources. Like anyone could say they're a doctor. Like that famous writer Joe Dispenza, like he literally says he's a doctor on his book and he's not a doctor. So it's like anybody could friggin' say anything that they want to say. And so yeah, I was just like, let's make money, let's make more money because we already have money, like let's share with people these things. And the problem is like when you're taking advice from people, rich white men who are successful, we don't know their background. Like, were they born into money? How did they become successful? And it's a lot of people in that book to do background research on just for this, concept. And a lot of the things that they share are very classist, very albiest, like I think there's not really, like, they're telling you how to change your life, but they're not telling you like, if you start here, if you have this kind of life, this may affect you, like observe this first. Like they're just telling you change everything in your life right now and how you operate in your life. And that's why it didn't really sit right with me, and that's why I was like, I can't finish this book. So yeah, yeah. So I wrote a bunch of notes about breaking down the law of attraction because that's one of the most popular manifestation formulas or ideas right now in New Age spirituality. So what is the law of attraction, right? Like that's what The Secret is about. The Secret, the book or the movie, is about the law of attraction. The law of attraction, the way that they explain it, is kind of like this rule or law of how the universe operates. And it basically says like the universe doesn't see good or bad. The universe is neutral. The universe doesn't look at like, oh, I'm having a bad time and give me something good. The universe is just a neutral force that exists on this algorithm kind of where whatever you put out, it mirrors back to you. That's kind of like what the law of attraction is. So it's like if you put out bad vibes, bad thoughts, expectations of bad, then bad things, quote unquote, bad things are going to be mirrored back to you because the universe, in this theory, sees things as neutral. It doesn't know good or bad, or it doesn't deal in good or bad. So whatever you put out, it gives back to you just as like how the natural algorithm works. And so that's the law of attraction. So what they're trying to tell you is like you have to understand how that law of attraction works. So if you are putting out quote unquote bad stuff or stuff that's bad to you, then you're going to get that back because the universe doesn't see it as like good or bad. It sees everything as like the same, and it's just the algorithm just giving back to you what you have. Now, like I was saying, this isn't really inclusive because it's from a privileged point of view of like rich, mostly white dudes. So there's a lot of people who I've seen online who are like, well, I didn't put out vibes that I wanted to experience racism. So why is racism, coming towards me? or like I didn't put out that I wanted to be homeless or experience homelessness, so why is that coming back to me? Like people are saying like, well, that doesn't make sense. If that's strictly an algorithm of how it works and what you put out is what you get back, then how come I'm experiencing these systemic issues or these external issues? And so it really is like not laying down that foundation that there's other things that can affect this, and it's not just you. Like you're not the only one who has the power to affect the entire world around you. um and I will go more in detail into like the parts that we do have power over and how we can use this if we want to. But it never talks about like, but if you are a POC, the system is stacked against you. It like the government is literally designed against you, right? If you're a queer person, it's designed against you. If you're a person with chronic illness or disabilities, it's designed against you. Like it never talks about like where you could be starting from, and that there are systemic external factors that are out of our control, and we can't just like use our mind to make them disappear. Like no matter how much you think about, you know, being completely healthy, that's not going to like will away your chronic illness, you know? And there, like I said, there are parts that are, we are able to have control over, but I think it's just really like not inclusive at all, and very bypassy to just tell people like whatever you put out is what you get. And I don't know. I don't know. It just, let me check my notes. Hold on. I don't want to skip too far ahead. I feel like I am. Mm, yeah, okay. So before I skip ahead to that other part, basically, I do see the value in this kind of belief because there is science behind this. They're basically telling you to retrain your brain so that you can expect better things as opposed to having a pessimistic outlook on like expecting the worst. They're basically telling you to retrain your brain so that you can view life as mostly positive, so that you can look for positives, like retrain your brain to look for positive things, to be expectant to experience positive things, or things that I'm using positive, I guess, as a, like a blanket statement, when it really could mean like whatever you want, you know, like to attract into your life. And this is basically like a scientific term called priming. So the science behind this, like putting out thoughts is what you get back. There is truth in this. Priming is basically like whatever our brain is primed for to experience and to see based off of our lived experiences, and our beliefs, does actually reflect back to us to a certain extent, right? So I think with this, we have to understand like there's maybe like a Venn diagram of like this circle is stuff that we could actually be in control of, and like this circle his stuff that we actually like, it's external and life happens, and like kind of like chaos theory, like anything could happen at any time, you know, that is totally out of your control. And there's no mention of that kind of stuff in my opinion, in a lot of manifestation like formulas and things like that that people are teaching. So the part that is in our control, for an example, um if you're going to rent an apartment and you're like looking for a new home, your brain is thinking like I am searching for a new home, so it will be primed to look for like for rent signs, right? It's like that weird phenomenon where it's like when you're looking for a new place to stay, all of a sudden you see all these for rent signs everywhere, and you're like, wait, I don't remember seeing all these for rent signs. They're just like popping up everywhere, and it's your brain is being primed to look for these types of things because that's what you're in search of right now. So that is actually like a scientific thing, that we can prime ourselves to search for certain things with our brain, like telling our brain to get on board with certain stuff. So you can kind of see like there is a scope of like where those limitations end, right? Like again, with the racism, like you can't prime yourself to just never experience racism ever again if you're a POC, because there's external factors of other people and their actions and their stuff that is affecting you. It's like all together in that like chaos theory soup. And there's multiple things like all working at once, different forces working at once. But again, we can prime ourselves to see things more positively, to look only for certain things, to like ignore certain things. Like we've seen that before where like I've read about this where it's like, you know, people who are experiencing homelessness, like people will literally like prime their brain to like ignore them as if they're not even there, as if they're not even humans. And they'll just be walking around like just ignoring, not even seeing, like you won't even see it. Another example that I love to bring up all the time is like, um, this is a bit gendered, but it makes sense. Like female bodied people, we're primed in our brain to observe more stuff. Like, because we're like, I'm unsafe in a lot more situations. I could be unsafe. So we're primed to look for those certain things. So we can see all these little tiny micro gestures. We observe all the things in the space. We observe the energy in the space. We observe the exits in the space. We observe like men in the space. We observe every perceived threat versus male bodied people, they exist in a world, quote unquote, like their internal world that is much safer. They're not at risk to being taken advantage of, to being like hit on, to being any of these things. So they don't have to, when they go in a room, they're not seeing all that stuff. So whenever we go back, like, you know, from being out somewhere, I'll literally tell my boyfriend, like, oh, did you notice that one guy was like falling over drunk? Oh, did you notice this? Did you notice? He's like, no, I didn't see any of that. What are you talking about? Like, I didn't even notice any of that. And it's because like his brain is primed to only need to see the things that he needs to see. And my brain is primed to see everything as a survival mechanism. So those are like different ways that our brain can actually scientifically affect how we view the world and how we see the world, right? So it's definitely not going to be something that, you know, goes away in a day if we just decide to do that. It is a retraining. It's a brain retraining, which a lot of like healing modalities is a learning how to retrain our brain. So for an example, for this in my personal life, I grew up in a household that was like very, I guess, where my voice wasn't heard. Like no matter what I said, my point of view wasn't heard, my point of view didn't get across. I had to fight like for my right to be heard and for people to listen to me. And so that became like part of my like internal experience and my truth, that I believe that people just don't listen to me in general. I created this like blanket thing, like I'm not heard, I'm not seen, people don't listen to me, to the point where when I was in like high school and college, I literally would say nobody listens to me all the time. I'd be like, nobody fucking listens to me, I said that and look at what happened, nobody listened to me, and this is where we are, I could have told you that. And I just felt like that's going to be my life. Like I'm going to be arguing and trying to fight for people to listen to me because I have good ideas and nobody's hearing them, or I already knew the answer and nobody listened to me, right? Or just like people are not listening to my point of view and hearing my feelings. And when I started dating my partner, that was like a big issue where I was like, I don't feel like you're listening to me. And I would tell him, you never listen to me, all the time. And part of it is like breaking this down, you can see that part of it was my brain was primed to automatically assume that people weren't going to listen to me. So even in scenarios where people were listening to me, I still felt like they weren't listening to me because I was already expecting that. And I was already looking for being not listened to. My brain was searching for reasons or excuses or things to prove that I wasn't being listened to. And then when people didn't listen to me, my brain was like, see, it's true. My ego was like, yo, you're still not being listened to. Look at this. Look at this. Another example. So what I did was I literally stopped saying that thing over and over again. I literally stopped saying nobody listens to me because I wanted to change that. I didn't want to go through the rest of my life feeling like nobody listened to me. And so I stopped saying that, and it did change a lot. Like over time, like I stopped looking for that and noticing that and feeling like that. And it wasn't like the main thing that was always in the forefront of my mind that I was always going towards in any scenario or situation. And you know, like once I realized like that pattern that I just explained to you, I was able to acknowledge like maybe part of me is just looking for that, or maybe part of me feels like I'm not being listened to when I was, or maybe that's not the most important thing and it's some other issue or something like that. And so now I don't feel like this is my truth, that nobody listens to me and I'm never listened to, um like as like my main thing in my life, right? So that's like an example of like retraining our brain and priming that is in our control. When it's stuff that's like we feel these things, we have emotional stuff, generally that's going to be like what's in your control. um but you know, there's certain things where like people have limitations and realities about their ethnic, their socioeconomic, their class, like all this kind of stuff that can totally affect their ability to see things in a positive way all the time, right? Like a simple perspective shift for that thing of nobody listens to me can make a big difference in my life. But a perspective shift, you know, when it comes to like systemic issues that like I'm not given the same chances as everybody else, you know, like there is a part where we can prime our brain to try and look for the positive parts, but then reality is the external forces are still going to happen even if we primed our brain to the best of our ability to never think that, or to never, you know, think that that's true or real, to like delusionalness. um it's still going to be there, and that is a big part that law of attraction kind of misses, in my opinion, because it creates this kind of like egoic feedback loop then, because then you're thinking, I'm trying really hard to change my thought pattern, and then this thing happened again. So then you're like, obviously, I'm to blame. I'm the reason that I'm still experiencing this. And people will literally do that. They like people who follow this type of manifestation. This is where you get um like the high vibe people, like only good vibes, only positive vibes, and they'll literally blame you. They'll be like, well, maybe your vibe isn't high enough and that's why you're attracting shitty situations. Like maybe you're not doing it right and that's why you're attracting this and this and this and this. And the reality is like there's only so much, and then there's still systemic and external factors. And so if we fully believe in this, you know, manifestation principle, then yeah, the ego, it becomes like the carrot on the stick, where it's like the ego just learns like, well, you're still not getting what you want because you're obviously not doing, like, believing it hard enough. You're obviously not, you know, being high vibe enough, and you're obviously not putting out the right, you know, stuff, and that's why you're attracting this. And so then we get this carrot on the stick where it's like, I'm never going to get what I want because there's always something wrong with me that I need to fix and do differently, and that's why I'm not getting what I want. When in reality, certain things could just be life, systemic issues, just like external limitations, right? Like, oh, I still have my chronic illness, but every day I'm doing thoughts and changing my patterns that I'm perfectly healthy. Like, why am I still not perfectly healthy? Like, that's an external thing, right? That is something that might be out of our control. Like maybe you got into an accident, a car accident, and that's what caused it. Like you're not causing the illness. Something else outside of your control is causing it. And no matter how hard you think about it or put out those vibes, you're still going to need to take medicine. You're still going to have to take it easy. You're still going to have limitations on your body. So there is like that lack of like awareness in the law of attraction theory, that there's more stuff that is out of our control and not everything is out of our control. And I think that, you know, that can be scary for a lot of people, not being in control, right? Acknowledging that there are certain things that are out of our control. And that's why there's this whole like, well, if I just keep putting it out there, I'm in control of everything, so it's me and I'm the problem, right? It feeds into like our hyper individualization as a society, as you know, survivors of trauma. Like I'm never gonna fucking let anybody help me, so I must be the only reason why I'm feeling, you know. And it just creates these like really unhealthy type of things. And again, I do want to say, I do think there is merit to it, right? Like we could have a chronic illness, but if we are only talking about being ill all of the time, then our brain is only going to be like stuck in viewing and seeing the illness part. And we owe it to ourselves to have some other happiness, right? Like we can't always be focusing on our illness. We can't always be focusing on this, always be focusing on that. Like we're humans, we need to have like full everything. And so there are parts that are in our control that we can try to have like a different outlook. We can try, like there's like a few cultures actually have this where they say like never say that you're sick. If you're sick, it's like a old like ancient thing where it's like never say that you're sick, say that you are getting better. So, like, there's a belief that if we keep saying that we are sick, then we are going to attract sickness to us and then we'll stay sick longer. But if we say that we are getting better, then we're focusing on healing because the human mind is so, so powerful and it can actually affect how things work in our body. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I watched like the MTV True Life thing, and this lady wanted to be pregnant so badly that she literally started having symptoms of pregnancy. Like her stomach got bigger, she had morning sickness, she was going to the doctor for pregnancy, no fucking baby inside of her. She didn't get impregnated at all, like on the scientific level, but she wanted to be pregnant so bad that her body literally started developing milk, started like acting like there was a baby inside of her. So the human mind is so powerful. And I think that's something that we take for granted is how priming is a powerful, powerful tool that we can use to our advantage to give us that perspective and those feelings that we want and to influence our direct environment and our surroundings to a huge degree, but also to acknowledge that there's certain things that just are out of our hands and we can't be in control of everything. And there's certain systemic things that we can't change just by thinking it away, right? Like we're powerful enough to change systemic things together. That's when you need, like with bigger things, we need more people to do those things, right? It can't just be one person. But yeah, know that that is really powerful. That episode was crazy when I saw it. I was like, how is she pregnant but there's no baby? So powerful, our mind, right? um okay, so let's see. So another part of the law of attraction that they tell you, so when you're having to put out thought, the things like the thought and the vibe and the energy that you want to attract, that's basically what they're telling you, right? The next part that they tell you is like, so they kind of tell you to like police your mind, very like 1984-esque. Like they literally tell you that your thought is so powerful, your thoughts and your mind is so powerful that it creates your reality, which we covered is true scientifically to a certain extent, that we have to be careful what words we are saying. And so they literally tell you there's a right way and a wrong way to like say phrases or things, like how that example that I just said, like don't say you're sick, say you're getting better. They literally tell you like don't ever say negative things, quote unquote negative things, what you deem as negative. Never focus on the things that you no longer want. Don't talk about or say those words. Find alternative statements that are the positive version of that, right? So the example, right? Like, I'm sick. No, I am getting better. Because they're saying, like, if you say, I don't want to be sick anymore, then they're saying you're still focusing on the thing that you don't want. And you're not focusing on the thing that you want. You're still focusing on the negative thing, quote unquote, for you and not the positive thing that you want to attract. And number one, like, I think that's weird to police our minds. I think if we want to, like, they literally say it to the point of they're like, every second you're having a thought. And so then, like, when I was reading that, I was like, how am I supposed to be aware of all the fucking thoughts that I'm having all of the time and make sure that they're all positive? And then my ego was like, yeah, because if you make one negative thought, it's going to wipe away all the positive thoughts that you've put out there. And so, like, there is like the power of affirmations and positive thinking. But I think to that extent, to tell somebody, like, be careful of everything you're fucking thinking and saying, like, that is wild because there is stuff that comes subconsciously based off of our trauma and our beliefs and our experiences, that's really hard to change that thought because you can say a different word but you might still feel that feeling and that still is valid. That's still energy that you're putting out, right? And so I think that it also was kind of weird because they're saying like if the universe doesn't see things as good or bad and it's only neutral, and I'm saying I don't want this, why wouldn't that work in the algorithm? I'm still being very clear about what I do and don't want. And I've had plenty of times in my life where I've said, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And I never got it. Right. So it's like, I've had like personal experiences that prove that wrong. And I also think like then this comes down to this weird like bypassing thing again, where we're only thinking about things that we want and never thinking about the things that we don't want. It like that's what a boundary is, right? Like I don't want this. This is the line that I'm saying I don't want. And I think that it kind of discourages people from being able to say like what they don't want and to think about things that they don't want in their life. Because if it's to the point where they're like every single second you're thinking a thought and that can influence what's coming into your life, like that creates so much stress and pressure, number one. But then I'm like going to stop trying to think about what I don't want or what I have currently that I don't like. And then I'm like now in this weird delusional place where I'm never assessing what's truly going on in my life. I'm never like focusing on things that might be like let's say in my business, like in business coaching is, like don't focus. A lot of business coaches will use this and say like don't think about what's going wrong in your business, think about what's going right in your business only, and only give attention to that. And like I took business 101 in college. The first thing they teach you is to assess the strengths and the weaknesses of your business, possible positives and negatives, so that you can create plans to bolster up the weaknesses, right? So I think that the like policing and saying only certain words and only certain phrases, number one, it's really hard. Like if you're thinking like I don't want to be scared anymore, what is like the opposite positive thing that you say for that? Like I want to be excited. Like that's still not the same energy of what I'm looking for, of the feeling that I'm looking for. And it's like not really allowing me to explore and dive into like what am I fearful about? Why am I feeling fear? Because then I'm scared to like even think about fear because I don't want the universe to bring that back to me just because I'm having a session to think about these things that aren't working for me. And that's where you get like those weird new age like spiritual like practitioners who are like think that they're like healed enough because they're never focusing on what's wrong with them and they're only helping other people with shit like that. And it's like that's because you're like trying not to focus on these negative things, and that's like stunting your growth and your journey, right? So I agree that it is important to think positively because there is actually scientific stuff between like our brain and priming and things like that. But to do it to that extent is like really weird and not the best in my opinion, because yeah, it just gave me so much stress and pressure. I was like, how do I police? So great, one bad thought, what if they're like they literally have like a statistic in the book like you have X amount of thoughts, like thousands of thoughts per day, and they're all like adding to your, so it's like cool, I'm the fucking problem, why I'm not getting what I want because my stupid negative thoughts. And then you're like, damn, now I have all this pressure and I'm fucking pissed at myself and I'm disappointed in myself and I'm shameful or judging myself. And I'm like, get it together. Say your thoughts better. Think better thoughts. And it's like, you can't just force yourself to think these different thoughts and to see the world differently if you're not, like, if you've gone through trauma, especially, right? Like, if you understand that there's systemic things, then it's like, I can't just simply tell myself to think these things when I know that it's not true deep down. So give yourself a little grace with that. um, and the other thing too is like this other popular manifestation formula. So you you probably have heard about it by this point. Like a lot of new age spiritual people talk about it, where it's like you have to get clear on what you want, and they tell you like be really specific, super specific on what you want. And then they tell you you have to visualize it or write it down or think about it every day or have like some consistent like thing. And then they tell you you have to put it out there, like send it out into the universe, like tell the universe out loud or whatever, burn it on a piece of paper that you wrote down. And then they tell you you have to release it, like just let the universe take care of it. And then a lot of the times there's like a practicing gratitude. Like in order for your manifestations, you have to keep practicing gratitude daily. Like think about things that are amazing in your life, right? Which is very similar to the law of attraction, right? Like I feel like it's probably like derivative from it or something like that. Um, so problems with this one that I have found, um, like telling everyone to think about what they desire in their life. Number one, a thing that happens a lot is like they tell you to only focus on your desires. Like this is very similar to like the law of attraction thing that we were just talking about, where it's like only focusing on what you want, not focusing on what you currently have or what you don't have, and or like how it is and how it's not what you want. So like only focusing on your desires, again, it's very similar to the thing that we just talked about. It's kind of delusional. It's not allowing you to focus on the reality, to assess the reality, to figure out maybe why it's hard for us to get on board with our desires. Maybe we're feeling shame around them, but we just keep focusing on them and then we're like triggering our body, or it's just not sitting right in our body. And then we're like, I must be not doing it right. I must be not focusing or visualizing enough or writing it down specifically enough. And it's like, maybe there is actually a thing that we are scared of and we're not being honest with ourselves. We're not fostering a space of honesty and openness to say, well, I do want this desire in theory, but in reality, when I come near this desire, I push away from it because I'm scared. Because why? Giving yourself like time to observe. Oh, because like my body doesn't feel safe to receive this desire yet. I don't think I'm deserving of this desire yet. So I'm going to continue to push it away. And then once you realize that, you can make so much more forward progress with your desires than to just keep focusing and focusing and focusing on your desire even though something is not sitting right, right? So with that, when you're like focusing on your desires, they usually tell you like write it down, be really specific, have like a manifestation journal, or like write it down then burn it, or visualize like super super detailed what it is. So I would say like everybody actually is different in how like manifestation works. I kind of like human design for this. I know human design is something that people are kind of like iffy on as well, but I found like success with this is in human design there's literally hold on, I'm skipping ahead. Ah, yes. Okay. Before we go to this, for everybody, it's different how they experience and how they're going to call in their desires. So I actually saw this, somebody talk about this, and it was actually really eye opening for me. How they're saying like you have to get really specific about what the desire is. And people were saying like, well, how do I know what the desire is if I've never experienced it, right? Like, how can I feel like that's a big thing, like feel the desire. It's about the feeling, conjuring up the feeling, and everybody does that differently, right? um but like how can I, like if I want to be rich, we'll just use that example. How do I know what it feels like to be rich? Because I've never been rich. So how do I know? How do I know what that feels like? How can I be so specific that it's has no other opportunity besides to be attracted to me if I've never experienced what it is to be rich? Like I might be like, oh, I think it's like this. I think this is how I would feel, or I've seen other people do this. But again, everybody is different. And maybe when I am rich, it doesn't feel like that at all, right? So it kind of creates this like your it gives space for your ego to be like, no, you're not doing it right, nope, that's not actually how it feels, and to create this like this storyline that like you are the reason why it's not working, and you're not visualizing it hard enough, you're not feeling it in the right way, you're not, or like I've seen people say like you're not fully feeling it, like you're not allowing yourself to feel it, like you have a fear that's pushing you away from it. And like it's actually really hard to do that. Like the person that I saw, they had said like, you know, I wanted to have financial stability, or I wanted to like feel like financially stable, and the best way that helped me to learn what that feels like is to actually be financially stable, because then I could actually experience it and I knew what it felt like for me, and my body wasn't in consistent fight or flight or fear mode, so I could actually be open and like, wow, this is what it's like. And so then after that, I'm able to experience it more because I've actually experienced it. Like some people, and we'll talk about this with the human design, you actually have to experience it first to even know what it is. And some people can like be really like, oh, I can tap into this motion or this thing, this feeling via visualization, and that's enough for me to just like keep calling it in. But some people actually don't work that way. And it's like, I need to know what it is first before I could even like understand what like it feels like. Um, and the other thing too is like, this doesn't take this type of thing, this type of principle doesn't take into account like trauma and being trauma informed, because like for me a big thing was like, I want to feel safe in my body. And if I'm just trying to consistently visualize being safe in my body, but I've never experienced being safe in my body, how do I know what that's like, right? And then it actually, like, if I've never experienced safety in my body, that might feel weird to me. Like, I'm not used to it. My window of threshold for tolerance of safety in my body, my life has never given me that option, or I've never experienced that in my life. So for my window of tolerance, I'm able to experience fight or flight, survival, uncomfortability, or dissociation in my body. That's what I'm able to tolerate based off of my lived experiences. So when I'm saying I deep down logically, or my body craves to feel safe and have safety in my body, but I've never experienced that. When I actually do experience safety in my body, it might not be how I visualized it in my head, of feeling at peace and at ease and happy and loving and all these things. It actually might feel really scary in my body when I finally experience it. It might feel foreign because it's not something I've like worked with in the past in my body. It might feel uncomfortable because it's part of changing and growing into something that I've never had. And I think that when you're like, when you're hearing like people talk about manifestation and feeling that feeling, it never really mentions like these type of like emotional pieces with like the feelings involved. That includes emotions. And it never talks about like the real science behind it, that like actually it might feel really weird when you experience this. It might not actually feel comfortable, and being honest about that and giving yourself that space to say like, oh, so if I do want to feel safe in my body, I am aware that it might feel weird, and eventually it's going to feel like that feeling that I want to call in. But maybe I just want to be aware of when I'm starting to feel that, right? And also the other part of the trauma informed that it doesn't really leave space for is like, you can't go from 0 to 60 for these types of feelings in your body. If I've never experienced safety because I've gone through so much trauma in my life, and I'm scared to allow that vulnerability into my body, by telling my body and focusing over and over that I just want to be fully, completely safe, like from going to not safe to fully, completely safe, that is going to be more traumatic for me. And I'm like forcing myself to keep doing it. It might trigger my actual body and my nervous system and make me feel even more unsafe. So it's like, maybe I don't want to feel fully safe. Maybe I want to make a little bit more safety in my life. Maybe I want to feel a little more safe, right? So it's like, understanding where you're at is really important, which is why we can't have like the delusional only focusing on these things, so that we can support ourselves better and we can actually progress a little faster than if we were just like being delusional and trying to force ourselves to go all the way over to this one point of view, right? Like understanding that it's scary for me to feel safe. So I want to feel, what can make me feel a little bit safer in this moment? Or overall in my life, what's something I can do that will be a little bit safer? Or, hey, body, are you okay with trying this thing for 10 minutes that might make us like retraining our brain and our body to feel safer? Can you get on board with this time frame of 10 minutes? We'll try it out, and then we can go back to the original state that we're always in. Like, that is actually being more trauma informed and can help us to progress to feel that thing that we want to feel more, as opposed to just like, why aren't you feeling safe? What the fuck? You didn't feel safe yet. What's wrong with you? Oh, and then you're like, now you're stressed because you're blaming yourself again for these things, right? Um, so it's really important to acknowledge like, these are real external factors, these are real systemic things, these are real like principles or feelings or realities of what we're going through, and we can't just boop, oh, everything is fixed, yay, okay, you know. Yeah, so definitely it's about being realistic and what your real experiences and your limitations, and trying not to blame yourself as you go through that, and to work with where you're at. Like, hey, are we okay with this? Can we do a little bit more? why am I experiencing resistance to this? Let's dive into that, dig into that. And allowing yourself to do the incremental thing, because like with the manifestation, I know as humans, we're impatient. We want things to happen immediately. And I feel like a lot of like manifestation people, they're like, I can show you how to get from zero figures to six figures in 6 months. And I feel like that kind of like speeding is the antithesis of growth and healing. Healing and growth is incremental, it is slow. And when we give ourselves that freedom to move at the pace that we want to, it can go faster, but it's really unrealistic to push things to go quickly, because true sustainable foundational growth and healing is slow, and I would argue should be slower. um or at least like allowing yourself to go at a pace that feels natural to you, because if we try and force things so quickly, then we can create unsustainable processes or practices or businesses, and we can create like burnout, we can create overwhelm, we can create anxiety. Like I was saying, if we try and force ourselves to go to safety, we're going to re-trigger ourselves, right? We're going to cause a nervous breakdown or something. So it is really important to acknowledge that we need to move at our own pace and to be aware of every step of how we're actually feeling and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just like pushing past it and keep holding, like you can't keep holding open like thoughts and energy and space and putting it out there that this is what you want to attract, when your body and your other energy and your actions and your other thoughts are not ever going to be aligned and on board with that, because it's going to create so much dissonance in your body and in your energy and in your feelings that it's just going to be a weird never ending cycle, right? Like how like that thing they're like, oh, you have in the law of attraction, you have x like thousands of hundreds of thousands of thoughts per day. How can I possibly police all of those, right? So if I spend 5 minutes meditating and thinking about what I want, that's 5 minutes. But then the rest of the day, I'm like, because my traumas and my responses and my body, and I'm not acknowledging that, it's still putting out mostly that, even if you were going to follow the law of attraction. So it's like, we should still be honest with ourselves and work with this. Okay, so let me see where I'm at. Yeah. So going back to that fear thing that I was talking about, where it's like, if we grow and we feel like this increased safety in our body, it might feel weird. So this was something that I wanted to share that I was like playing around with in my personal life to kind of like create an example to illustrate these points that I was talking about. So I was trying to manifest more money, right? And I was trying to visualize it and do that traditional thing of visualizing. They tell you like, what would you do with the money? Where would you put it? Be really specific so you can start, your brain can start to understand and like create that, like see it as like a realistic thing. And then I was like, this doesn't really, it's not really working for me. So then I was like, okay, how would I, like this doesn't feel realistic to me. Like I don't have these things currently in my life that I would spend the money on, right? So then I was like, what's something that I can get on board of for being specific but like still visualizing? So I started visualizing like numbers in my bank account. Like when I open my bank app, I'm going to see these numbers, and then that's going to help me to feel like, oh, I can finally pay all my bills and I don't have to struggle, or I don't have to worry about when I'm going to get more money or how I'm going to get more money or things like that. And that was kind of like better for me. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is it, right? So I was doing that for a while. Um, and then I kind of noticed it was still kind of like the common thread between those two was like it was hard for me to buy into it. There was like this sense of disbelief, um, that I could like accept that I could make this money. Like there was still like that dissonance, right? So then I was like getting honest. I was like, let's be honest. Why do I feel this way? Why is it not feeling like this could be a reality for me? Um, and like what would I actually feel like if I was given like a shit ton of money today? And I realized like if I actually had like a shit ton of money today, like a lot of people use that visualization, like what would you do if you won the lottery or whatever, right? But I was like, if I got like a $5,000 order today and I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. How would that feel? And when I was honest with myself about how it would actually feel if I had a like a bunch of money that I was trying to have, I would feel like I was getting away with murder. I feel like I did something like inappropriate or wrong, I would feel like it was a fluke or something like that, right? And so I was like, that's being honest about my relationship to money and my belief about my capacity for having money, or like the amount of money that I could actually make. And then when I told myself, like, I want to feel that, I want to feel like I just robbed a bank and I'm getting away with fucking murder when I have money in my bank account, that actually was kind of fun for me. I was like, that's realistic because my body's going to be like, what is this? What? Like, this isn't right. Like, I've never had this before. And that's like, actually how I would feel if I had money. So it's like being realistic about, okay, this is where I'm at and this is what I'm going to feel if I have money, and I can believe that. That feels rooted in a truth for me, so I can get behind this. And it felt like, it's kind of ridiculous, right? Getting away with murder, robbing a bank, that kind of feeling. So I was like, it's kind of fun. Like my inner child was like, yeah, 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 we're getting away with it. Yeah. Like that felt more right to me because I was being honest about what is the truth about how I would feel. And then I was able to be like, okay, and then I could, that helped me to like move past that feeling, or to sort through the feelings. If it's like, that's actually how I would feel, okay, why? And then we can start to create like affirmations or visualizations or things that are realistic to our lived experience, and not just like, yeah, ideally this is how I would want to feel, but realistically never would feel that. um yeah, so it was pretty fun. um yeah, I think we covered this already. No, okay. So, and the other part of like living in the desire and only visualizing the desire that isn't, is like bypassy, is like, it kind of, it obviously a lot of this stuff is like based on capitalism. Just gonna go ahead and say that. And basically it's like, in the capitalist system, we're taught to further detach from our bodies over and over and force ourselves to just keep going, right? Even when we're like actually burnt out. And so if we're like constantly living in our desires and we're not acknowledging that we're still feeling burnt out by hustling or just living or struggling to survive, that we're like ignoring our true feelings and checking in with our body and how we're actually feeling about it. Um, and we're trying to pretend that our problems don't exist because of that fear that if we focus on them, it's going to bring more problems to us. So it really creates this, like, we see this pattern, right? Of like not being realistic with what's actually going on in our body and trying to like force our point of view and our perspective to be something that we're not actually experiencing. I think it needs to be more about like a relationship of working together to slowly feel better about bringing that stuff in, and to feel honest and authentic when we're bringing these things in, as opposed to like, we're here and I'm like the mirroring of the video. We're here and we want to get here, and so we're like, go there, just go there already, just go there. And it's like not, it could even push us farther away. So it's like, how can we move those closer and closer together to meet in the middle, or to shift into something that feels a little more realistic for ourselves? um okay. Yeah, honestly, this really cool psychic download that I got, is like, using the tools that you already know works for you. So this is what I was kind of jumping ahead earlier, was like human design. So um I'm a manifesting generator with sacral authority. So I know that visualization like works for me, and tapping into like if it feels like a yes in my body. So I know that that's like how I work. And then I know that in my astrology, I have a lot of Gemini placements. So I like to write. I have this other placement. I think like my Neptune placement is also lends to like writing and things like that. So like I can write out things and get really nitty gritty with like writing. Um, and then like honestly, if this visualization came in, and it's a little unorthodox, which I love to be unorthodox, except for my Judaism. I'm just kidding. Um, is like, if you know how you work and how you love to receive currently, like the example that came to my head was like, if you have a kink, like if you have like a daddy kink or like a sub dom kink, you can literally visualize the universe as your daddy or as like your dom. And when you do things and when you're a good sub, then you would get that handed to you, right? Like that feels more fun to me and more reasonable to me than just saying like, yeah, of course you deserve to make all this money. And my ego's like, blah. And then, but if I visualize like a persona that's like, you've been really good, you deserve this, I'm like, hell yeah, I do. So like, just don't think in the box. Like, think as out of the box as possible, because it could literally be that, and maybe that visualization is a thing that like you go with that for like the rest of your life, and like you're able to feel good about the things that you receive because you feel like you earned them for being good. um okay, so the next thing that popular manifestation talks about is being super specific with what you want. We talked about this is where I was trying to jump ahead. So in human design there's passive and active manifestation. um and I kind of like this because it does speak to some people being really good at visualizing and being specific, and some people being like not really into that and needing to experience it before they can like understand it fully. And this human design thing like really like is the explaining part for me. Okay, so what is passive and active manifestation? So if you want to locate it, if you look up your human design chart, it's free online. There's these four sets of arrows, and the manifestation part is in the bottom right arrow. And so you can see like based off if it's facing to the left or to the right what type of manifester you are. And so if it points to the left, you're an active manifester or a specific manifester. So that buys into a lot of the popular manifestation theory. Like that will probably, those popular manifestation theories really click for you because this is actually how you work as a human, right? So the active or specific manifestation means like being as specific as possible about what you want to bring into the world. The way that you manifest is about like really visualizing and being rooted in the specifics and crafting and creating, like you build it and then you bring it into the world. So if that really is like lists, vision boards, visualization, being really specific, like the amount, the date, the feeling, the color, everything, and how you want it to be structured, and really birthing that into the world. So if it points to the right, then you're a passive or non-specific manifestor, which is the kind that I am, which is why a lot of this stuff doesn't really sit right with me. So you might be this as well. And that means that the details aren't as important. It's about like big pictures, like themes or big feelings are really what are going to work more for you. So if you are making like a vision board, it's about like big picture things, not specific little things. And lists aren't really going to be as good. And visualizations, it's more about like the feeling that you want to feel. Because for the passive or non-specific manifester, it's you have to experience, you have to wait for the universe to surprise you and bring you that thing that fits just right with what you were looking for in terms of like the feeling or the big picture. You're not concerned with like the small details. That's going to feel restrictive if you keep trying to get really into the details. And the goal is like you're supposed to allow it to surprise you and to be like, oh, that's exactly what I was looking for, wow. And then when you experience it, that's how you get to that point of knowing that it's exactly what you were looking for. You have to kind of experience it first, or go through it first, or feel that feeling first to know if it's a yes or a no, for like what you were trying to manifest or what you needed. So like general goals, big picture concepts, examples for that would be like, instead of like, I want to make $5,000 a month, it would be like, I want to make, some people will do like at least $5,000 a month, like where it's like giving an option for things to be like a certain way. Or you would say, I would like to make more than enough money to pay for my bills and to, contribute to my savings and have spending money after. So it's like you're not putting a number, but you're giving like a bigger picture of what you're actually looking for when you're thinking about that number. Um, yeah, and so like having a few general rules and just kind of like putting it there, and then like letting the universe kind of like work with that and send to you what's best for you. So that's kind of like how those different types of like manifestors work in human design that I really like, because it helps to explain like why is it hard for me to like be really specific. Like my shit is changing all the time. So like if I'm focusing on like a bigger picture or a feeling, then that's a little easier for me. Um so the other thing too is like the letting it go, how they're like, then release it. The universe will take care of it. You can't focus on it too much. You know, that one is always really hard for people. How can I not focus on having more money when it's blatantly aware or obvious every single day of my life that I don't have the money I need or want, you know, like stuff like that. It's really hard. And so I think that that can also be tied to the way that you're manifesting, right? Like um and maybe if you're a non-specific manifestor, you don't need to focus too hard on the details and you can let the universe send what's best for you. So like maybe you're not going to be focusing on it every single day. You're going to just like put it out there and kind of like be kind of vague about it and like work on it that way. But like for me, I know I can zoom in like really easily to all these small details, and so letting it go and trusting that it'll come and not focusing on it too much is like, you know, pretty hard. And so I'm trying to read my notes. Nope, I already said it. I already said the thing. I already went through this. I already said all this. So just disregard those last 10 seconds. But yeah, it's like the letting it go, I think also just is tied to like how you're manifesting, like what kind of way you manifest best. Because if you're like, you create that really detailed visualization and like specificity, then you feel like good and you're like, okay, I can let that go because I know exactly how and what, and I put in the work. Or if you're like, I put out those like vague things and I focus on like the feeling or like the general big picture, and now I can let that go. Like it's gonna make it maybe make it easier to let that go, but also knowing like the recent download I had about letting it go, I feel like it's not letting it go. I think that wording, letting it go, is like hard. I'm not letting go. Like I'm never gonna let go of the fact that I want more money. Like that just feels like I'm being delusional. It's hard for me to get behind that word choice. So it's more about like focusing on other things in the meantime, because you know you've done your job and your work to put that, you know, to put that out there, and that the universe is going to work with you, or whoever you believe in is going to work with you and bring that to you. But it's like not letting it go, but like I'm just pivoting to focus on other stuff, right? Because also like if I'm constantly focusing on my fear and what I don't have and my worrying, like it's not the best human experience. Like it's not as fun. So like I owe it to myself to like pivot and like not be so worried and zooming in on those small details and how I'm not having it yet or it's not here yet and all these things, and just kind of like, okay, I did that and now I'm just gonna like focus on something else in my life and whatever is going on. And just be open, just know that I'm open to that thing that I put out there, and it's coming. And I know like the faith part is like really hard for a lot of people too. Um and I think the more honest we are about the factors and what we're trying to call in and the realisticness that we already covered, that's going to make it a little easier to have faith too. Okay, so the last part of common manifestation I wanted to bring is the gratitude piece. So a lot of manifestation stuff is like focusing, you know, I think the gratitude piece goes with what we were talking about retraining your brain to prime it to see positive things. If we're creating a practice of, like they tell you, like write down like 5 to 10 things you're grateful for every day. If we're creating a practice of that, that is amazing, because then we're priming our brain to start looking at like things that go right for us or things that we enjoy, as opposed to only focusing on what we don't have and what isn't working for our life. And that is going to make us happier as a person. Like when they say like stop and smell the roses, enjoy the little things, that's basically like gratitude, right? Like we're finding passion, we're finding pleasure in the smaller things in our lives, or things that we're in control of, or things that can go right in our lives, which also helps with like not focusing too much on what we don't have, right? Um, so I do think there is a scientific part with the gratitude. Um, you know, just training your brain to not be so pessimistic, or trying to find things that you love about yourself, like those types of things. That's always going to be positive. but we have to be careful, again, the balance of like, if we're bypassing or ignoring the truth of our experience, if we're not preparing ourselves, for bad things that could happen. Because with the gratitude, it's like, to like, I've seen people say, like, when you're upset and you're expressing that you're upset, they're like, stop, like, think about what you're grateful for today instead. And it's like telling yourself to not feel your feelings or to not experience like the truth of what's going on for you, and like to just only focus on positive things. Again, it's very love and light, it's very like only high vibe, and that is a dangerous, like, I feel like that's an extreme of like the manifestation culture, right? um but I did have this really cool download that was related to gratitude. The other piece about gratitude that I think is like, I guess, missing from manifestation. So a lot of manifestation theory and stuff, it's like you said, it's tied to capitalism. So it's tied to individualism, like our culture of being very individualistic. And so a lot of what we do, it's like, I'm only doing this because it's going to give me something. It's going to bring me something, right? And this download that I got was like, we actually should be focusing on creating a like balance, a cyclical piece of like give and take, which in communal cultures or community cultures there is more of a sense of that. And I think for us it's like, just give me, give me, give me, give me, give me, like it's like, oh, it's your sovereign right to be rich, like you deserve to be rich, like that. Obviously, like, everyone deserves to be happy and like have everything, all of their needs met, like as basic human rights. But I think it doesn't focus on like other people too, right? It's like, you deserve this, it's mine. And so a lot of my manifestations are focused on myself, and my gratitude practice is the one little piece that allows me to think about other things that are going right in my life and tying in other people or my environment. And so this download that I was like shown is that we should really be doing more gratitude and more of like giving back, or like doing things that aren't just centered around bringing in our manifestation. And so we see this a lot in the witchcraft like world, which is why this like came in, because I was thinking about how we always do spells to bring in, to manifest. Like we create different spells using different like nature and herbs, and it's like for our betterment, for us. And there needs to be more of a sense of like that balance of like, I do call in those things and I do ask for these things, and but like my reciprocity should be like out of the goodness of my heart, or I should think more about balancing the reciprocity. If I'm constantly using spell work and calling in things, then I should be, maybe, when's the last time you like did a spell for like just your community? Like, oh, just want to put this out there, this spell, so that people experiencing hardship can feel some love and ease. I just want to put this spell for like the downfall of the fucking US government. Like, things for everybody. Um like, it's a little hard to explain, and I try to write it down as best as possible, but it's like really taking that gratitude to a step further, to like tying in our spirituality practice, tying in like the greater community and how we can serve the greater community, how we can nourish the greater community, how we can, we're putting out all this energy and expecting the universe to reflect it back to us. So like, where can we like give some energy to somebody else? Where can we nourish the earth? Where can we just like give that, be in that relationship and that more balance of like training ourselves to like not take and take and take, and also to give stuff, will help with like our sense of like belonging and rooting ourselves in like, there is something that is external, so yeah. I think that is pretty much everything that I was going to say. I know it feels a little like disjointed, that last part, but it came through, so I'm like sharing it. Um yeah, so at the end of the day, like, it's not one size fits all. I've seen this download like before, and it really just like chef's kiss. So thank you to my guides. But basically they were saying, it's like when a movie is super successful, then all of a sudden everybody tries to like pick out the pieces that they think are the reason why it was successful and literally copy and paste and put those like elements or pieces into another movie in hopes that it will be just as successful as the first movie. And it's not the case. Like, it never happens like that because it's not simply a formula. It is an amalgamation of all these things going together, that coming together, and they work right at that time for that one movie. And that magic cannot be like duplicated in that way. So we have to think about like our life and our journey as that same thing. Like, we can't just be copying what other people do and whatever they find successful. We have to like take into consideration, like, we can listen to them and try out their things, but like, we shouldn't feel bad if we're trying to do what a rich white man does and it's not working for us, because we're not all rich white men, right? So like, why would it work for us? Why would it be that easy? So it's really about finding what works best for you and being honest with yourself and taking those pieces that work for you and some that don't. Um, and not finding that shame and judgment about like thinking bad thoughts. It's so crazy to me that they tell you you can't think like negative things. And knowing that, yeah, some of this is rooted in science, and some of it is like just rich people having privilege. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I tried to get through everything. I was talking pretty fast this time. We still went over an hour because I was writing like for over 2 hours for these notes. I had a lot to say. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, is it really myths? I don't know. I guess it's myths because they're trying to sell us that this is the way that things work, and it's not. So yeah, I stand by that. It's myths. But yeah, until next time, everyone, bye. If you love Witchy and Weird podcasts, support us by donating monthly for as little as 99 cents at anchor.fm/witchyandweird/support. You can cancel at any time and 100% of the proceeds go directly to the pod. Or if you don't want to commit to a monthly donation, buy a coffee at ko-fi.com/wishyandweird to help fuel them while they record, edit, create, and upload content for the podcast. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and tell your witchy and weird friends about us too. Bye!